Assalamu alaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Hope you're doing well. We're continuing our reading of The Prince and other writings by Niccolo Machiavelli. Now, he's mentioned a lot. However, the people who mention him, they never read anything by him usually, and it sounds like a very spooky thing. And you're just supposed to assume that that person knows what they're talking about. So what I like to do is I actually like to read the text, so that way when someone brings it up, I know what angle is it they're getting at. They usually just use Niccolo Machiavelli's name as a synonym for, like, plotting and treachery. However, if you kind of see what he's talking about, it's not that bad. I mean, it's not the best, but, I mean, it's not anything out of left field. Okay? Let's continue. There was some notes that I wanted to read to you that were important for chapter 11. So we're going to pick up on those. So we were left off on number 2. There's only 5. So let's pick up on number 2. Bismillah. In 1484, Ferrara was defended from the Venetians by the forces of the Pope, the King of Naples, the Duke of Milan, and the Florentines in the so-called War of Salt. Okay, so War of Salt. The Pope in question here is Sixtus, referred to in the next sentence, that is Sixtus IV, who was Pope from 1471 to 1484, and who was a member of the Della Rovere family, and his nephew, Julius II, Pope, 1503. Oh, look at that. So hold on, Sixtus IV was the uncle of Pope Julius II. And both of those popes were from the Rovere family. So, it's a little politics there. Families getting their family members to be the leader of the Pope. To be the Pope. Sneaky. Notice this though. The 14th century to the 15th century, the Christians, they're not like the pacifist liberals of today, who are like, tread on us, atheists. Just do whatever you want. Right? They're not like that. Defended from the Venetians by the forces of the Pope. The forces of the Pope. So, when Christians today are like, oh, Khalifa of the Muslims, how terrifying. Well, how did Christianity maintain itself? It had a military, right? Oh, the note for chapter for number 3 is just see chapter 7. In a papal bull of 1500, Alexander taxed all of Christendom, ostensibly to support a crusade against the Turks. He also made cardinals pay for their offices and claimed the right to confiscate the wealth of those cardinals who died. Whoa! A pope was like, hey, you know what? If you die, we get to take your wealth. Machiavelli may also be thinking of the general sale of indulgences and ecclesiastical offices practiced by both popes. Okay, so indulgences, paying, like, oh, give me money. That's what Martin Luther was really against, which led to the Protestant Reformation and his 95 Theses. 95 or 99? I forget the number. But paying someone to be like, you pray for me and I'll be forgiven, you know, kind of really making forgiveness and redemption transactional, rather than actually having sincerity. Pope Leo X, a member of the Medici family. Okay, look at this. Wow. So Pope Leo X, a member of the Medici family. So we have the Medicis, and we have the Della Rovere, who was Pope from 1513 to 1521. Such short spans. Machiavelli's praise here is complicated, since Leo was a member of the family that had ended the Florentine Republic. ruled the city for most of the rest of Machiavelli's life and kept him in exile until 1520. So Machiavelli was actually exiled once. Look at that. Okay, now we're in chapter 12. How many kinds of troops there are, and on mercenaries. Having discussed in detail all the characteristics of those principalities, which I propose to speak of at the beginning, and having considered some of the causes of their successes and failures, and having also shown the methods by which many have tried to acquire and hold on to them, it now remains for me to discuss generally the methods of attack and defense that can be used by each of the states I mentioned earlier. We have said above how necessary it is for a prince to lay good foundations. Okay, so how necessary it is for a prince to lay good foundations. Otherwise, he is certain to come to ruin. The principal foundations of all states, whether new or old or mixed, are good laws and good arms. So notice this, good laws. Doesn't sound so scary, right? Good arms. So principal foundations. And because there cannot be good laws where there are not good arms. Oh, ain't that right? There cannot be good laws if they're not good arms. So that makes you think, doesn't it? So much could be said. Oh, I won't get too off track. And where there are good arms, there are bound to be good laws. I shall set aside the treatment of the laws, and shall speak of arms. I say then that the arms with which a prince defends his state are either his own, or of those of the mercenaries, or auxiliaries, or mixed troops. The mercenaries and auxiliaries are useless and dangerous, and if anyone has a state founded on the arms of mercenaries, he will never be able to stabilize or secure it, because they are disunited, ambitious, without discipline, disloyal, bold among friends, and enemies. And among enemies cowardly, without fear of God. So, wow, he's going in. So, mercenaries and auxiliaries, they're dangerous. So if you used mercenaries to build up your empire, it's not going to be as stable, because they're not really united behind one philosophy. They're kind of pay to play, essentially. So whoever pays them the most gold is gonna win. I think there's that classic scene in the Golden Sons, I forgot. The Golden Sons, but then there's the Golden Company. So Cersei Lannister in Game of Thrones hires the Golden Company to help her win, right? Because she can't get the loyalty anymore of the lords, because everything's so divided and chaotic. And then Dany, when she's taking Marine, the Second Sons, yeah, that's it, the Second Sons. And those mercenaries betray who they were originally hired for, and then go with Dany. So it's fascinating how even in the fantasy universe, you'll see what Machiavelli is talking about. You know, they're gonna go where the gold is. Without faith in men, and your ruin is deferred only as long as the assault is deferred. So, look at that. Your ruin is only at bay, essentially, as long as the assault is at bay. And in peace you are plundered by them, in war by the enemy. The reason for this is that they have no love, or any motive that keeps them in the field, other than a little bit of salary, which is not enough to make them willing to die for you. So on point. So on point. So they don't love what you're about, right? There's like money. It's fantastic. It's like the more you read these older books, the more you see how some movies are actually good in the series. Because they're actually taking from what the intelligent people have written and then putting it into a cinematic format. They are quite willing to be your soldiers as long as you are not waging war. But when war comes, then it is retreat or run away. I should not have to expend much effort to demonstrate this, since the present ruin of Italy is caused by nothing other than its having relied for many years on mercenary armies. I wonder if you could consider who the United States hires to destabilize the Middle East, if those are mercenaries. I wonder if you could use that title for them as well. And why it always leads to destabilization and betrayal. These once enabled some men to get ahead, and they did appear courageous amongst themselves. But when the foreigner arrived, they showed themselves for what they were. In consequence, Charles, King of France, was able to take Italy with a piece of chalk, and he who said that the cause of this was our sins spoke the truth, although they were not the sins he was thinking of, but the ones I have described, and because they were the sins of princes, they too have suffered the punishment for them. I want to demonstrate more fully the sorry nature of these arms. Mercenary captains are either excellent men or not. If they are, you cannot trust yourself to them. So, if the captain of the mercenaries are like excellent war guys, if they are, then you can't trust them. For they will always aspire to their own greatness, either by oppressing you, who are their employer, or by oppressing others beyond your intentions. Beyond your intentions. So you hire them, I want you to do this, then they're like, we're gonna go ahead and put a little bit of our flavor on it. But if the captain is not capable, virtuoso, ordinarily he will ruin you. So, if he's not capable, this is amazing. Really think about what he's saying here. The mercenary captain, if he's good at his job, he's going to be dangerous to you because he'll either go too far than what you wanted, and they're not always going to respect you as their employer. And what you intended for them to do isn't going to be the same as what they're going to intend to do. Because, as he mentioned, they're not going to be loyal to you. It's about coin, right? And they're ambitious. Now, if they're bad and they're not capable, they're going to drain your bank, totally not help you at all. So, either way you square it, can't rely on them. And if someone should respond that whoever bears arms will do this, whether mercenary or not, I will reply that armies must be employed either by a prince or by a republic. The prince must go in person and assume the office of captain. The republic has to send its citizens. Oh, this is a freaking educational. So, if you're a royal, you gotta go in person. Right? Like, you need to go in person. If you're a republic, you gotta send your own citizens. You don't hire an outside force to fight on your behalf. The people who have ties to the land should fight. This is interesting because in America is a constitutional republic with an indirect, some say direct, democracy. But when you have a bunch of foreigners coming in, mass migration, they have zero ties to the land. They're not going to have the same love as someone who was generationally born here, they grew up here, they like their country, they have a sense of nationalism, right? Patriotism. But if you have a foreigner, it's almost like they're like they get a green card, but they're almost like a mercenary if they're going to enlist in your army, right? It's quite different. So, if you have all these these non-patriotic people in your country, and you need to send them to go to war, I wonder if they almost become de facto mercenaries. They're not going to fight as hard. But it is quite telling to say that a republic has to send its own citizens in order to fight on its behalf, and not just have outside mercenaries doing its dirty work. And when it sends one of them who does not turn out to be capable, it must replace him, and if he is capable, it must keep him by means of the laws from going beyond his proper authority. So the laws keeping those from going beyond their proper authority. And one sees, from experience, that individual princes and armed republics make very great advances, and that mercenary armies do nothing but damage. Okay, notice this. Damage versus great advances. So, if a prince is leading his army or a republic sends its own citizen, they're going to make greater advances. Whereas the mercenary armies might just do pure damage. It's almost like wondering what's the difference. So damage just to raw infrastructure, right? Whereas maybe the special forces or the glory element or something that makes the fighters more tactical and strategic, maybe, because they don't want to do damage as much. They want to take out the enemy versus just destroy everything, maybe. It's really quite telling how he's contrasting it here. And it is more difficult to get a republic, armed with its own troops, to submit to the rule of one of its own citizens than one armed with foreign troops. Let's read that again. It's more difficult to get a republic that has its own troops to submit to the rule of a foreign army. If you use your own people, that's quite different, isn't it? You use outside forces, well, now you're an occupier. You're not as loved. You don't have the fraternity. You don't have that connection, that brotherhood. Rome and Sparta, for many centuries, stood armed and free. The Swiss are well armed and completely free. As for mercenary armies, in antiquity, there is the example of the Carthaginians. Okay, so mercenary armies, Carthaginians, who were almost overcome by their mercenary soldiers after the end of the first war with the Romans, even though the Carthaginians had their own citizens as leaders. Look at that. So apparently, the Carthaginians hired a bunch of mercenaries to fight for them, and then those mercenaries can turn on them and take them over. Philip of Macedonia, that's the dad of Alexander the Great, I believe, was made captain of the troops of the Thebans after the death of Epaminondas, and after his victory, he took away the liberty from them. Milanese, after the death of Duke Filippo, hired Francesco Sforza against the Venetians, who, having overcome the enemy at Caravaggio, allied himself with them to oppress the Milanese. His employers... This guy is smart, man. See, that's one of the reasons why I like reading history. You see these interesting patterns. And when you point out some of this stuff, and people are like, that's a conspiracy theory, you know, this or that. But no. It's just fascinating to see how they operate and what they're all about. Very telling, very telling. Sforza's father, being a soldier employed by Queen Giovanna of Naples, I didn't know there was a Queen of Naples, all of a sudden left her unarmed, so that she was compelled, in order not to lose her kingdom, to throw herself into the lap of the King of Aragon. Whoa. I didn't know that. Throw herself in the lap, she had to use her sexuality just to beg for his mercy? Creepy. And if the Venetians and the Florentines have, in the past, increased their states by means of these forces, and their captains have not made themselves princes of those cities, but have defended them, I reply that the Florentines, in this case, have been favored by luck. 4 of the capable virtuosi captains, whom they might have feared, some did not win, some met with opposition, and others directed their ambitions elsewhere. Okay. Wow. So, he really brought in some history there that was very beneficial for us. So, if we ever become rulers of a territory, don't hire mercenaries or auxiliaries or mixed troops. If you're a republic, you need your own citizens. If you're a prince, you need to be there risking your life for the people. They can endure, they can feel a sense of connection to you and see that you're willing to die with them. England don't have that now, right? I mean, Prince Harry ain't doing much, nor is William. Very fascinating. Let me know what you think. This was a great section. He also mentioned Charles, King of France, as well. Duke Filippo, Francesco Sforza, Philip of Macedonia, the Carthaginians, mashallah, and then also mentioned Rome and Sparta, okay? If you'd like to join my blog, it's www.subscribestar.com/MilahanArchive. Hope to see you there.